So this is the brief overview of all the topics we are going to be covering today. Moving ahead, let's start with a small introduction. So basically, React.js was built by Facebook and it was released in 2013. It is still primarily maintained by Facebook. It was built to address some challenges faced by companies who are building large-scale dynamic web apps. So basically, wherever the data and the website is changing with user interactions. So first, let us understand why we are moving away from the plain HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So the main issue is whenever we have to update the DOM, we have to write a lot of code, and it makes maintaining the website, like huge web apps, quite difficult. So what React offers is called as virtual DOM. So So understanding what DOM is, basically whenever the browser has to render HTML, it creates something called as document object model. So it contains all the HTML elements and its properties. So what React does is it keeps a lightweight copy of the actual DOM so that whenever there's any update, it can uh, so what it does is it compares the previous state and the current state, and then it pushes the changes to the actual DOM. So basically, before we had to do all of this, first select whatever the element we want using a query selector and then push the updates. We no longer have to do this. One more key feature of React would be like components. Most of the website, what happens is there are some components like nav bar and footer which we have to repeat multiple times. Before, what you had to do is like copy paste the entire code. Now you no longer have to do that. Basically, what we do is we write bits of codes, like they're called as components, and then reuse them wherever we want. Coming to we'll come to unidirectional data flow later on. So basically, just ensure that you have Node.js installed and npm, and also VS Code. What I need you to do is go to the extensions tab in VS Code and download these two extensions. One is React snippets and one more is Prettier. It'll help you with building projects. Prettier is basically for formatting code. So I'll just show you 1 second how to do that. Basically, if you have just installed VS Code, you'll probably find this extension, this tab in the left side. Now, for me, it is in the right side because I've changed it. What I need to do is Prettier. Yeah, just install this extension. And I need you to install one more extension. Just a second. Yeah, this one. I need you to install these two extensions. It'll just help you with uh, writing code faster. So basically moving ahead, what we'll do is we'll see how to create a new React app quickly. So the most famous command would be to do npx create React app and the name of your project. So we'll do just that now. Basically npx create React app, and I'm naming my project as to do app demo. So what this will take some time to run. So if anybody is doing it, just do it along. So until that's running, what we'll do is we'll just go through some of the concepts. So basically, I'll explain the folder structure. So whenever the project is whenever the command is completed running, you'll see all of these files and folders created. So node modules basically contains all the code for all the packages that you have. Like mainly React, all the internal libraries used, Webpack, all these things. And in .git ignore, you'll mention all the files and folders that you don't want Git to keep track of. Like you don't want some API secrets to be exposed externally. So you just have to add those files here. And coming inside public folder, this is something that is common for all pages. So index.html contains the sort of template of the entire React app, and all of the logic goes inside the src folder. Basically, the entry point for our React app will be in the index.js folder, and app.js handles all the logic. And keep in mind, you can't edit or delete index.html and index.js. Any other file you can just edit. And all of the code that you want React to see, you have to keep it inside the src folder. Otherwise, React won't see it as a part of the project. So coming to some key features that are only like specific to React, one of them would be components, as I told. So let us take an example of e-commerce app. There are like multiple product cards which you see like on Amazon. So you can make them in React from something called as a component. So basically they are like bits of reusable code. Like you can see an example over here. And whenever you want to reuse them, you just like have to uh, import this example component and render it there. We'll look into how we code that later on. Basically, they're like JavaScript functions, but they return HTML instead of like say integer or booleans. And one more important thing in React would be props. So say like going back to the e-commerce example, there's the entire container and then you have many products. So you're fetching all the products at the like say at the top level component, but then you have to pass all that product data to each product card. So we do that using props. And all this data is stored in something called as a state. And it is something that can change over time. So we look into how we can get access to the state. So basically in functional components, React offers us something called as hooks. They are like reusable functions, which we can use to like change the state, view it, etc. There are some rules that you have to follow for hooks, and like there are three of those. One, you can only use it inside a React function component and should be at the top level, and it cannot be conditional. You can't call a hook inside if or else statement. So let us see what a hook is. Basically, the most used hook would be useState, and this will be the variable which stores the data. SetState is a function that you call whenever you want to like change the value of the variable. And useState is the name of the React hook. And whatever you provide inside this will be the default value. And moving on, use effect is one more hook which you would like come across a lot. Say you want to fetch some data like whenever the page loads and display it. For this, you would use effect. So you can see the syntax right over here. So what you would do is inside this function, you would pass all the logic that you would want to run on the initial page render. So you can see an empty bracket here. This means that this use effect function will run only once the page is loaded and not after that. But if we include any variable here and that variable changes, then the use effect would rerun. And in this return block, what you can do is you can add any code that you want to run when the component is unmounted. Say you have something like a chat app and you're continuously pulling messages from a database. But when the user closes that chat and opens another chat, you want to basically cancel those requests and start a new one. So all of that logic would go inside the return block. So what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and code some of this part. So what we are building today would be a to-do app. So you can see the like app is run, like the project has been created. So what I'll do is I'll just cd into my folder. Cd means basically change directory. So inside the terminal, I'm entering the to-do app demo page. The npm start is a command that you would use to run the React project. What I'll do is I'll just show you the code for now. So basically, as I told, public would contain all the HTML and PNG files. Basically, normal HTML, the title, the body, And div ID root is where our entire React app would be like pushed in. Let's show you how. So basically the entry point for a React app would be index.js. So what we are doing here is we are using the React DOM to create a root. So basically we are grabbing that element which was there in the HTML file with the ID root, and then we are pushing all this code that is there inside app inside that div. So basically now we just have something called as learn React. So we'll just start that. We'll start the project and see how it looks for now. Basically, it'll take some time to run. And this is how the project looks initially. And whenever you change the code here, it's gonna update there. Say I remove the entire thing. Yeah, basically it's empty. Say hello world. And you see hello world here. So basically what React offers is called as hot reload. So whenever you change a file and save it, it will be pushed to the local host website. So what we'll do is we'll start by creating our state. So we're building a to-do app, right? So what we'll do is we need to keep track of all the tasks we have. So let's call it maybe tasks. Yeah. So what here what happens is I'm in like initializing a new state called as task. And currently the default value is just an empty array because we don't have any tasks at the start of the app. So what we'll do is we'll create a component called as home. So what we'll do is I'll create a component called as home and I'll pass the tasks state to it. But now what will happen is like all these things are not defined. Basically, you have to import use state from React. I'll show you how to do that. So basically, we can import home and then we can import use state. But this home thing, home file is not yet created. So let us go ahead and create that. So inside the src folder, what I'll do is I'll create a new folder called as components. And in that, we'll create a home file called as home.jsx. So what I'll do is here, I'll show you one more thing. Uh, What we can do to create a new React component directly is RAFE. So if you had installed that extension, this is what you can do. Like you can just click it and boom, there you have your home component. So yeah, I'll tell you what's happening. So what is happening is we have created a component called as home and we are rendering it inside the div called as app. So basically you can see it here. Let me just paste a snippet of code here so that we can move ahead faster. Yep. So what I'll do is I'll just grab some code. I'll explain it in a while. So let us just create some utility functions which we'll use later on. First one would be to add the task. Basically, whenever in a to-do app, the basic function should be to add the task. What we are doing here is we're setting the task state to whatever the initial tasks were and the new task. And the delete task, basically what it does is it uses a JavaScript method called as filter. So what we are doing is we are grabbing the task variable and we're filtering it and we're just returning the ones that doesn't contain the same title. So basically we are deleting that task which we don't want. And in update task, what we are doing is like if there is updated task, we are finding that particular task with using the title, and then we are just updating it. Otherwise, we are just returning the old task. So inside the like what I'll do is I'll pass all of these functions to the home component as well. Basically, add a task as update task and add and delete as well. So you see, whenever I save the file, the code got formatted automatically. This is using the prettier extension. Delete this since we no longer need that. So these things which I passed right now are called as props. So basically, app is the parent container and home is the child component. So we are passing all those props. So we can access all of those from here. So what I'll do is I'll just grab the code for the home component directly. I'll explain what we're doing is. So whatever props we pass on the parent component can be accessible from the function props using the curly braces. So what we passed and passed tasks, right? So task is a variable and these three are the functions. So what we'll do is we'll create for now let's just ignore the task list and let us create the task form. So what task form is basically I'll just create a form element and then I'll give a add button. So whenever user hits like types the task name and presses add, it'll just update in the task list. So let us go over how we would build a form component in React. So yeah, forms is something that you'll come across a lot in React. Most basic use would be like whenever you want a user to like log in or sign up. So you would create forms. I think you have done this before as well. What is the difference in React is we use something called as controlled forms. So basically it is normally like a normal form and an input. Here you'd notice the difference, like these two things are not something you do before. So what we'll do is we'll create a state called as name and we'll pass the input value to be name. So we are basically hard coding that the inputs value should be that. And whenever the user is typing in something, we are changing the state value to whatever the user is typing. So this way we know like at any given point of time, we know the value of each inputs. And input types submit is basically the submit button. And what is the advantage of having form is whenever the user types in the data and hits enter, like you can run in a function. Here in on submit, whatever function you pass is going to run whenever the user presses the submit button or hits enter. Here we do like we have to do event.prevent default because usually whenever a user submits a form, the page will reload. But since we are using a single page application that is like React, we don't have to do that. So like event.prevent default will prevent the like spontaneous reload that happens. And here we are just alerting with the name. So what I'll do is we'll just code this form part of our to-do app. So what we're doing here is we are importing it from the components. So let me create that file. Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll just grab the code for that part as well. Yeah. So let me explain the entire code. So again, what we are doing here is in the task form, we need the add task function, right? So whenever the user like types in the title and stuff and hits enter, we need the function to add the task. So we are passing down that as props and we are accessing it here. In the task form component, like we have two states. One is the title and one more is the deadline. So let us go over the code once. So here I have like one input which has the value of title, and whenever it is changing, we are setting the title state to whatever the user is typing. And like similarly, deadline, the same thing. We're just passing the value and we are setting the value to that. And button type submit would be basically the submit button. So whenever the user hits submit, this handle submit would run, and all these things happen. So first we are preventing the spontaneous refresh, and then we are adding the task. So basically this function which we created in the app.js. So what is happening is I'm passing the entire task. Like this object represents one task. It has a title and a deadline. So what happens is like I explain this code. What dot 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 task means whatever the previous task is there, and whatever you put here gets over. It overrides whatever was there in the dot 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 tasks. So let us see how it looks for now. Yeah, like you can see the formatting is pretty bad because like we haven't coded in CSS yet. So what I'm using here is called as Tailwind CSS. Since I haven't really installed that yet, let me go ahead and install that. Second. Yeah, give me a second. Yeah. So what we'll do is we'll just go directly to the Tailwind website to know how to set up Tailwind. So what is Tailwind is it's basically a CSS library. So instead of writing the entire CSS by ourselves, we can just write it inside the HTML. For example, here, like say block, text, gray, all these things instead of going to a CSS file, putting the class name here, we can directly code it here. So I'll have to install all these packages for Tailwind to work. So first we are installing the Tailwind CSS package, and we are running npx tailwind css in it. What this will do is it will create a tailwind config.js, which will like contain all the configuration information. I'll, yeah. So now it is empty. What we need to do is basically copy this from here. 1 second. Then paste it here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add one more file. Because we are using JSX file extension, I'm just going to add that. And we need to add these three commands to our CSS file. Let me just go to a CSS file. Yeah. So this is the CSS file that we have been using. Index.css would be imported in the index.js file. See, the CSS file is imported here. So React automatically parses the CSS file. So what this allows is it allows Tailwind to push all of its classes. Now we should be yeah, now should be good to go. I'm gonna run the watch file. So I just change the CSS file. So what this does is probably like spits out output.css file. which I would need to import in our index.js so that it is recognized. Yeah, so that is about it. So what we'll do is we'll create a new terminal. Uh, Let me go into our to-do app by using the cd command again. So let me run the project. Fully, that should have fixed our CSS issues. Yeah, that does fix it. What I'll do is from here as well, I'll grab some code that I had earlier written, just one part. Yeah. So what I'm doing is for the entire background, I'm adding a background color, this a greenish color, which I told. So basically now this entire thing doesn't work. I'll just show you how it works. What I'll do is in the app.js, let me just comment. So let me just log the task whenever the user hits the add task. So it should be visible in the console, right? So let's just say hi, and then select some random date for the deadline. Yeah, that does for yeah. So you see, like the task we added before, the deadline and hi is visible here. So we know that whenever the user hits add button, the code is working. What we'll do next is so whenever the user adds the task, he should be able to see it, right? Now he's not able to see it. So let's just uh, go over how we can do that. Moving ahead, I'll just explain you how we display multiple elements. So one more thing, like before going ahead, is multiple inputs and forms. So like consider you have a big form like name, age, address, all these things like a payment form, for example. So when like what we are doing here is for each input, we are creating a separate state. So if there are 10 inputs and you add 10 states, the app like really gets buggy. So what we do is like just create a like state called as inputs, and we initialize it to an empty object. And what we do is like for each thing, say for name, we just put the value as inputs not dot username. For age, inputs dot age, and for like all the inputs, we'll pass the same handle change function. Here, what we used to do initially is we're setting the state directly over here, but since here we are handling multiple things, we just pass one handle change function. What it does is it grabs the name, basically the name tag of the input, and the value, and values whatever the current value is. And what it does is it sets the value, like we are using the similar syntax. So what it does is this values represents the previous value of the state. Dot values is like it spreads the entire operator in form of objects. And what it does is it just update the one that user is typing currently. Say we are typing our age, it just updates our age. We don't need it here since we have only two inputs. But if you have more than one input, this is how you would do it. One more concept you'd like requires conditional rendering, which we can directly use here. One second. So basically what happens is here we don't have any tasks yet. So what we can do is like if the task dot length is 0, we can just write that no tasks found. Otherwise, we can return the entire task. So there are two types of syntax you can use for this. One is like you can check by using the if keyword in JavaScript. So like if items.length is 0, then return one thing, otherwise return another. What we are using here is called as ternary operator. It just works the same way. It is like a cleaner way of writing that. So what we do is like question mark is like if statement and like this or this colon symbol means or. So what we need now is something called as list and keys. So like going back to our tasks, basically a tasks is a like array of elements, right? So we want to display an array of elements in the browser. So how we do is using something called as JSX code. So inside React, inside the like return block, whenever you use this curly braces, it means you're writing JavaScript code. It is no longer HTML code. So in this example, what they're doing is where they're mapping through an array called as items. They're returning a list element. So like map and item is like single item, say New York or San Francisco. And they're returning this list element. And again, when you use curly braces, this is called as JavaScript code, right? Whenever you use curly braces, return is basically HTML code. Remember, a React component should always return HTML code. It can't return any like just a number or some JavaScript code. So here we are just returning the items since these are strings. And one thing to keep in mind is we should always include the key. What it does is it helps React in identifying each element separately. Basically, there are like say there are 10 items and you update one of them. If you don't mention the key, one React will throw an error, and whenever there's an update in one of the element, the entire page gets re-rendered. In this case, that won't happen since you have like put the key. And I hope you know the JavaScript map method. If not, what it does is like it just goes through each and every element in the array, and whatever is inside is called as a callback function. For each element, this function will be called. Here, basically, we are just returning some HTML. So let us code this part out. Basically, in the home, the part I commented before, task list, right? So like what I'm doing is inside the task list, I'm passing the props as task, delete task, and edit task. Basically, these two are obviously functions, and these two are this is the task because we need to render it. Let us go ahead and create that component. So let us like start my this, and what we'll do is for now I'll just access the tasks thing. What I'll do if the tasks or length is 0, what I'll do is just return as no tasks found. Right. What this means basically is if the task's length is 0, which initially it would be, it'll just return no task found. And whenever the user is adding any task, we'll just display this for now. Let us go and test if it works. This is the old code. Second. Yeah. And let's reload it to see if there are any errors. Okay, there is no error. So now it is like showing no task found. Let us just add a task and add. See what happens is whenever the tasks is updated, uh, yeah. So initially the task.length was 0 because there was no task. But when I hit the add button, that wasn't the case anymore. So what happens is It just shows task list. Now instead of showing task list, what we'll do is we'll render the actual tasks. Yep. So let me just grab some code for that instead of coding it out entirely. Yep. So yeah, basically it's the same thing. What we are doing extra here is I just added some CSS. So basically when the length is 0, there are no tasks. Otherwise, what we'll do is we'll follow what we learned earlier. So basically, we're mapping to the tasks state which was passed through the props. Basically, so we are passing it from the app component where we initialize the state to the home component, and from the home component, I'm passing it the task list component, and it is here. So we're using it now. So for each task, what I'm doing is I'm mapping through it, and this part is basically called as a callback function. This runs for each element in the task. So what we're doing here is React gives you two things. Like any JavaScript map function would give you the element and the index. So for the key, we are calling it index. We're just passing the index value because the index it starts from the 1 and it ends at length -1. So it is unique. Remember, key must be unique for like each React element. And then again, we are passing the task, delete task, and the edit task. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and code the task item element. So basically, what we need to do here is 1 second. Basically, the whatever we are receiving here, we're receiving task. I'll just grab that. And I'll show you what to do. Uh, let us just let me just display the name of the task for me. So remember what we did here in task form. Okay. So the two properties of the task were title and deadline. What I'll do is I'll just render the title for now. Yeah, yeah. So I'll just refresh so that there are no errors. So as soon as we add, we should see, yeah, it is basically displaying the title of the task. So let us just code it up a little bit more. We'll just add some CSS. Yeah. So what we are doing now is let us just ignore this part for now, since we are not going to be using that part yet. So now let me just explain. So this task item is the one that gets rendered for each task the user adds. And inside, we're just initializing it with a div. We're just giving it a background color. And h2 is basically the title element. And task.title basically represents whatever title the user gave here, task and deadline. So, like one more thing, if you guys are having any, I hope you guys are not having any issue understanding Tailwind CSS, but still I'll just go over some like tags which we use that repeatedly. One would be the BG. BG is basically a background color. Here, I just put a custom color, and P would be padding. So there are like multiple padding options available as well. Like P would be like normal padding, but if you want in only X direction, you could use PX, or if you want in only Y direction, you could use PY. And some more would be like padding top, like PT. If you write PT, it'll be top. Similarly, there is bottom, right, left, everything. And rounded basically, yeah. So rounded is basically giving the border radius. If you're not able to get these definitions and the code suggestions, what you should do is you should install another extension called as Tailwind. Yeah, Tailwind CSS IntelliSense. This will give you multiple features, basically this autocomplete, linting, and obviously that classes definition. Oh yeah, rounded is basically the border radius. Shadow LG is it gives you a shadow like uh, background shadow. I'll just show you how it looks later on. Now text Excel would be for the like we need the title should be bold like large in size, and font bold is basically making it bold. Then again, like I think this is pretty self-explanatory. Text gray would give it the color. And now what we have here is we have two buttons. Like one is delete and one is edit. So what we are doing here is if you are not aware of flex, it is like a CSS property. It is called as flexbox. It is used for styling elements. So if you like in CSS, how you do is you would add display and flex. The natural value is block. So when it is flex, what happens is the elements go in a row fashion. Like it becomes horizontally aligned. That is one advantage. But then if you want to change it to a column direction, you just have to do flex col. So it would come in the column direction. Let me just show you how that looks. See, now it is in the column direction, right? But normally it would be in the row direction. It would look like this. Yes. Yeah. And one thing you can see is our elements are like weirdly getting centrally aligned. That is probably because of some existing CSS code. So to avoid that, what you could do is first you could go through like index.css. Index.css is usually clean. The problem would be with app.css. This is like the code that comes with React. So what you'll do is just delete that code. So yeah, now you can see everything is fixed. Initially, those things were center aligned. Yeah, like I'll go over it again. Basically, H2 this. So, and the shadow large is giving this like shadowish effect. And one more thing, yeah. Going back, how we are displaying it here is in this div, we are adding a property called as grid. Grid is another like CSS property for displaying elements. Instead of flex, this is one more called as grid. So grid is like basically a normal grid, right? Yeah, basically like this. You can create all these complex elements using the CSS grid property. I'll just explain what we are doing here. So first, we are setting the display of this the entire list we are rendering here to grid. And basically, grid cols one means this grid has only one column. And I'll explain, like, let us go over what this part is. So if you're not aware, there's something called as responsiveness in CS. So what happens is whenever you change the screen size, the code should change automatically, right? Say this input is this wide now. So whenever I'm changing the like, window size, it's getting resized automatically. See this high, for example. I'm telling there's only one column, right? So let me just add two, three more for you to. understand properly. Yeah, see. So the tasks I'm adding are getting added in like one column rather than two columns. And what this means, SM2 columns means after a particular screen width, like after 640 pixels, what happens is it like changes to two columns. Like this, yeah. This is around where the 640 pixel would be. If you want a proper idea, like what you could do here is could put responsive. And here you can see the width and here you can see the height of the virtual device. So whenever, sorry, that was the width. So observe whenever the like thing reaches to 640, it becomes two columns. Same goes to large. So whenever it is above like 1024 pixels, it'll have three columns. I believe our screen size would be more than that. I'll just try it out. Yeah. So here we have three columns, but then when you're below that size, it would be two columns. And whenever you're like going to a phone size, it will be just one column. So this helps our website to have different layouts, like matching the screen sizes. Otherwise, if you have like three columns in a phone, it will be like too cluttered and basically you can't see anything. Yeah. What I'll do is like, mm, so now what happens is let's just test out the delete property. Just explain what's happening. Uh, Again, what we are doing is we are creating a button like this delete. What happens is in the task list, we are mapping to the tasks array and we are displaying the task item. So in each task item component, basically this small boxes are the task item component. We have all the data related to the task because we have passed it through the props, remember? So this delete task component, which we had initially created in the hub.js file, is passed on to the task item component. So let me what is this on-click event? This is called as a event listener in React. So whenever a user hits this button, this on-click function runs. Even when we are clicking the add button here, the same function is running. Forgot to explain that, I believe. Yeah, so what the difference here was we didn't have to put the on-click uh, property to this button because it was a submit, because it was inside a form and it was having a property of type submit. So HTML basically recognizes this button as a submit button. So whenever that is hit, it runs the on submit function. So what we are doing here is we are just adding the task and we are setting the title to like basically empty here. And the add task is the same function which we wrote here. Now what happens in this whenever the user hits the delete button in the task list component is we are passing the title. So uh, the event goes up the chain. So basically from a task item, it will go to task list and task list is inside the home component and it travels up to the app.js and here it finds the delete task function and it runs it. So basically what we're doing is we are filtering out any tasks which do not have the title of which the user clicked. So basically only that would be removed. Say I'm deleting this, that will get delete, deleting this, that will get delete. And React automatically like rearranges everything because we have set the grid properties in the CSS. Yeah, I think like this CSS properties are pretty self-explanatory. Only new thing would be like here space h2. I'll tell you what that means. So if we don't have that property, See, these two buttons are getting touched. Space x2 means the spacing in the x direction. This is a tailwind class, by the way. Like if you had to actually do it, you have to do it using the margin. So what you would normally do is like put a class name to this, put a class name to this, and margin right and margin left. That is what you have to do. But here we just have to do space x2. Like it gives two rems of space in the x direction. Rem is basically a like a distance unit, and empty is basically margin top. I don't think I have to explain that. So what we'll do is we'll take a 10-minute break for now, and after the break, I'll come and start coding the edit function. Like we'll code this edit task, and then we'll go ahead to the next topics. Uh, so yeah, 1 second. I'll just answer some doubts which you guys had. So yeah, Omkar, Rajat, how did the SRC folder and public folder get created? So when we ran that npx create react app, then what this command does is it creates all the tooling that is necessary for a React project. So that is how the SRC and public folder got created. And let us go to the next doubt. Hi, Naman. I'm getting cannot be loaded running scripts. So yeah, that is basically an issue with your browser. Try running it on Chrome and basically follow the error. It'll probably give you like tell you how to fix the error. It is just a settings issue. Yeah, I hope that answers your question. Next, how are you seeing these details 4 seconds ago when you hover a line? Not sure what you're talking about. Let me just look into it. Am I seeing it though? Yeah, I'm not sure. I can't see these the things which you're talking about, but mostly it is because VS Code keeps track of it. Yeah, yeah. So that is because I have an extension called as Git Lens. It keeps track of all the like versioning. So I'll probably show you that. Yeah, this. If you are not installed it already, like I don't think it will be there on your system. Just again go to the extensions tab and install that. Basically, this keeps track of all those things which you are having without. Yeah, the attendance link will be sent in a few minutes. Yeah. Yes, yes. How is Tailwind different from inline? I think Rishabh has answered your doubt. Yeah, the attendance link. 1 second. Let us just fix that error. One second. Yeah, we are fixing the error. 1 second. So guys, wait for some time. We'll inform once the issue with the Google form is fixed. Basically, you can put your attendance through that. Uh, just wait for some time, like 5-10 minutes. We'll fix that, and let us resume the session at 4:10. Don't worry, like we'll fix it. Yeah, guys. So what we'll do is we'll just start the session again. Uh, and I'll share the attendance link again, the QR code and such. Yeah, don't worry, we'll share the attendance again. What we'll do is like yeah. I hope you can see my screen. So now let us just continue building our to-do app. We'll go ahead and build the edit function. So like what I had planned is for the edit function, we'll go to a new page and the user will be able to see a form named as like edit task, and then uh, yeah. So there we'll call out the edit task functionality. But to support different page functionality in React, what we need to install is something called as React Router DOM. This helps us like build multiple pages. So what is the difference between this and just like putting a direct link tag? So if you put a direct link tag, so whenever you change the page, what happens is the page reloads, which we don't want to happen. So what we'll do is we'll use something called as a React Router DOM. Yeah, then install that. Basically, link component is similar to the A href, like the A tag in HTML, and the tools like specifies the href. Yeah, what this is called. So basically, this is a way of writing strings instead of like this. Instead of like this, we'll just use backticks and find it at the left end of your keyboard. So what this is telling is go to the edit page and then slash. Whenever you start with dollar and brackets, it is basically JavaScript code again. It is no longer a string. So using this, you can like easily write strings instead of concatenating a string and a JavaScript variable. So like what you'd have to do instead of that, you'd have to do uh, like say edit and then plus and then title. So instead of that, we can just use the backtick syntax, which is better. So like observe whenever I save the entire code's format again, that is because of the prettier extension. And now what will happen is I'll show you. So whenever I hit edit, it doesn't work because we haven't yet set up the React router. So let us go ahead and do that. So basically, you have to import a couple of things from React router. Yeah, we'll import browser router as router, and we'll import some more things. So they're called as routes and a single route as well. Yeah, so just run the React app again. So whenever you're installing any package, it is recommended to stop the development server and run the npm start command again. Otherwise, it like while installing some packages, it might break. Yeah, it's working. So let me go through the code that I have to do for that. Instead of this, so first we put everything inside a router. Then yeah. So what we have to do is something called as a routes. Inside the routes, we'll start putting each and every route. So in route, what you have to specify is the path, and the path like for a home component, path will be slash basically the landing page, and the element would be the one that we just removed. Let me just remove that. Don't need it anymore. So basically in our app, we just have like one route for now, and it works similar to that. It's just the one route. When we need multiple routes, what we need to do is we need to specify the route we need. And yeah. So I think you would have got like come across this syntax before in routes in Express session. So what this implies is it is a parameter called as title, and I'll show you how to like, access this. So instead of this, let me put something called as edit task. Edit task. I think we don't need any add task and delete task to be there on that. But then this component still doesn't exist. So let us just go ahead and create that. So what I did here is inside the home, like, I put the home component inside the components page folder. Best practice is what we do usually is we create an other folder called as pages. Okay. Folder is new file, uh, pages slash, they will just put the edit task for now. Task.csx. Yeah, what I'll do is I'll move the home to here to the pages directory. Notice what happens is like we had imported the home component in the app.js folder, but now like since I'm moving it to another folder, we need to update the import. So VS Code does it for us automatically. Just put yes, and what happens is here it just updates the import. So what we'll do in edit task is so let me show you what we do here. We're passing the task in the update task function. So instead of that, let's use params.title. So you can either do this and we can display the title here. So, so notice like whenever there is an error with your code, React also pushes it here. Edit task is not defined in app.js. Basically, we didn't import this component. You could normally go and manually import it, or otherwise in VS Code, what you could do is like control spacebar or command spacebar, and it'll like give you suggestions. You can directly import it like that. So what is usually recommended is you keep your imports organized. Yeah. Whatever the pages are there, we'll just keep it separate and the CSS separate and the things which we are importing from a library separate. So what should happen now is whenever we go to this URL, this component should get rendered, just this. So remember in our task item, what happens is we are having an edit button and we are adding a link. Uh, we are wrapping it in a link component to that page. So again, use params is not important. So we do the same thing. That's it. Just put control spacebar and it gives a suggestion to import. So let me just add a example task here. Yeah. What happens is whenever we go to this page, basically remember I'm not importing like I'm not returning anything except the title. So like let us actually build the component to update the task. Let me just grab some code for that. I'll explain it in a while. Yeah, this is a pretty big piece of code, but then yeah, and this is how it looks for now. I'll just go over it line by line. So basically, I think you remember use state and use effect I thought in the like, starting of the session. So what use effect does is this is a like React hook, and it technically renders only once when the page loads, and this is called a dependency array. So whatever value we are passing here, use effect keep track of that. So whenever one of these value changes, it will run this callback function again. So what we are doing now is from the app.js component, we are passing the entire task, right? And from params, we are getting the title. If you remember from the task item, I'm just sending it to edit and the task title. So basically, our task title is test and edit. So that is the route we are going through. So you might come across this like bracket is equal to something. What this is called as object destructuring. So what we are doing is use params is basically an object. So I'm getting the entire. So like I'll just show you how it looks. Oh no, uh, params, and so the code doesn't error out. I'll just put it like that. Let me just refresh that. What you can see is params is basically an object, and here it just contains like one element that is the title. So, yeah. So instead of doing all that, you can just directly like get the title property from the object using this syntax. It's called as object destructuring. And yeah, use params and use navigate. You get this from React Router DOM. And what we do from navigate is like whenever you want to push the user to some other route programmatically, say it is some website that is behind a auth wall, like Google or something, and someone is trying to access a page but is not logged in yet. So what you would do is you check if he is not logged in and you push him back to the login page. So we can do that using navigate, basically like this. So what we are doing here is inside the use effect, like basically when the component renders, what we are doing is we are trying to find the current task. So we have the title of the task. So we are using a JavaScript find function. We are mapping through every single task and whichever matches with the same title, we are finding it. This is not like very production ready because like there can be multiple tasks with the same title. So what you would ideally do is like have an ID. And like if we find a current task and we're just set like we are initializing a task state and we're setting the task state to what we found from the tasks array. And like remember this, we have to run this every time the title or the tasks change because otherwise like when you come again, this like it might be stuck in the old stage. So like moving ahead. So let us start with the form element. Like I think this is a new CSS property, so let me just explain that part. So what max width large does is like it sets a maximum width. Like see, even if you increase the screen size by anything, this form isn't getting like bigger. Whereas like you go to the home page, the form is like this big. And one more thing, like as you saw, whenever I refresh the website, the tasks are gone because we are just storing the tasks in memory. I'll show at the end of the session if there's time how to process this task, like even after the screen reloads. So yeah, basically, let me go ahead. So yeah, this is the input of the title. So we're just putting the task, the title here. Task is, remember, the local variable, local state. And whenever it is changing, just setting the task like so this, I'll tell you why it is useless in this case, because we have made this input read only, meaning like you can't even like change this. Like, got it? Like moving ahead, then a deadline. So according to our code, we can only change the deadline. So instead of 30, let me make it like 28. So let us see what happens when we hit the update button. Again, this is a form and this is a submit. The button is a type of submit. What happens is again like same thing. We're preventing the default behavior of the browser, which is like to reload whenever the user submits the form. We're preventing that. We're calling the update task function. This update task function is coming from the props, which you should pass here. Yeah. 1 second. Yeah. So I have wrongly named the variable here. Just update that. So what we are doing is we are calling that update task function and we are passing the task. And what this does is like it updates this state which is like common across our homepage and the task list component. So it finds the one we are trying to update using the title. Normally you would use an ID and then it like changes that value to the updated task. So here let me just change the deadline to say 28 update. So yeah, you can see the deadline is changed to 28. So yeah, that is it for the edit functionality. I'll show you one more thing. Basically, say I want a nav bar, like usually most of the websites have a nav bar, right? So what you do is like if you put any component here, it won't be changing across different routes. It'll be the same. Usually the nav bar is the same, right? So what you can do is like go ahead and build a nav bar component quickly. So before building that, the attendance sheet is out. You can mark it now. I think it is accessible to everyone. What I'll do is I'll just go ahead and grab some code for the navbar as well. Yeah, basically what happens now is again the same issue. We haven't imported the navbar component. What we do is control space bar and then enter. Yeah, navbar component does just basically this. I'll explain it. Uh, this is a HTML tag called as nav. And here class name I'm just putting the background, padding and sticky. Sticky is a CSS property. What happens is like if there are multiple to-dos and then I'm just scrolling down, I'll just show you. Let me just randomly like spam this. So yeah, there are multiple to-dos, right? And when I'm scrolling down, this snapper you can see it'll stay on the top. And again, it's a say when we are going to a edit page and I click this, I can go to the home page. This is a feature in like most of the website, like ensure to have this. Uh, your logo, like company logo or the website logo, should be linked to the home page. Yeah, this is one thing you can do. Like if you want like something to be like common across multiple pages, you can just add those components here above the routes. Whatever goes inside the routes is like the different pages. Uh, let's share the QR code for attendance who, if I just give it like 1 or 2 minutes, you can mark your attendance until then. I'll just wait for a few more, like 1 more minute, and then we'll start again. Yeah, I hope everyone has marked the attendance. Let me just confirm that. Yeah, attendance is done. If anyone is facing issue, just use that QR code. Yeah. So, so the last feature for today would be like persistence. Uh, See, we have like so many to-dos now. When I refresh it, what happens is like there's no to-do, right? So what we could use for this is something called as a local storage. So I'll just tell you what local storage is. So to view a local storage, you can press F12 and you can go to the application tab here. You can find local storage, and here you can find all the like values your website has set, and these things will be like common across multiple reloads. These are just some like values which are set by some other websites which I was using before, like I was building. Let me just clear it because we don't really need those. So what I'll do is whenever a user adds the task, this function will be called, right? What I'll do is local storage. Yeah. So local storage dot set items and task. So what we are doing is we are setting a like say local storage is basically like an object as a like key value pair. This is if you look into the definition, it is key and value. Both should be strings. So the key would be tasks, and since this array is like JavaScript object, we are just string like we apply the JSON.stringify method to store it. So I'll just show you what happens. Whenever I hit add, this will be there. And let me just start one more. So see what happens is like whenever I'm hitting the add function, the tasks are getting stored in the local storage. So even when I refresh it, although the tasks are getting like pulled here, it is still like persistent in the local storage if you see. So what I'll do is uh, we'll run a use effect function. Hope we have imported that. Yes, we have. Yeah. Let's explain what this does. So what we are doing is local storage dot get item tasks get this like tries to find the object with the key tasks, and this has the value of it. So basically this entire thing. And JSON.parse, what it does is it converts a string to an object. And if there are any tasks found, we can just set the local tasks state to that. So now look what happens. Whenever I refresh, the tasks are persistent. Now, one thing that you would have to do is you'd have to like change it everywhere, because whenever you delete the tasks, you have to not only update it in the like local state, you have to update it in the local storage as well. For example, whenever you're like hitting the delete task button, we want the like I'm trying to let's say I'm trying to delete this. So not only we have to update this state, we have to update the local storage as well. So basically what this does is, yeah, so say we are deleting this task. Title is hide to, so task.filter, what it does is with this code, it only like lets the task with the title which is not as this to remain in the local storage. So yeah, see, whenever you delete that, it is gone from the local storage and from the local state as well. So yeah. And similarly, whenever we are updating the task, we have to go through the same process. Basically, the same code which we were running inside the, what do you say, the set state function, we have to run it inside the local storage as well. So, so now what we have done is we have like converted all the functions to the add task, the delete task, and the update task to use local storage. So it is completely persistent now. Say I'm editing this, getting stored in the local storage, and yeah, I can't read the title. So let me just change the date. Observe the date will get changed here. Yeah, see, it got changed from 29 to 30. Yeah, basically that is for persistent. One thing to remember is whenever you are doing authentication, never store authentication tokens in local storage, because if your website is like vulnerable to XSS attacks, some other like hacker can access the tokens of some other user using the local storage. Yeah, that's about it for our to-do app. I'll share the code if you guys need it after the session. So let's just go through the slides again. Yeah, I've gone through the React router. So best practices, we create a new directory under the SRC folder called as pages, and we can list all of the pages there. And obviously this is the generic code that you would use: browser router, routes, and then each route. Here they have used like slightly different things. So what I did here is put the navbar component over here. So instead of that, what they're doing is they're trying to build a layout. So instead of just a navbar, they have both a navbar and footer, probably a sidebar as well. So they want everything to fit inside that. So they're using this called as layout, and they're making a route component and wrapping all the routes inside it. And one more thing would be this route path. I'll just show that as well. Yeah. So this is a simple example of a 404 page. So in some like major website, if you like follow a broken link or just type a address wrong, so what you can find is like 404 not found, right? So you can achieve that in React by just adding this route, like path should be star. So yeah, let's go here. Let me go to some like a random gibberish thing which doesn't exist. So what it does is it gives 404 not found. But if we go to the proper page, it'll render that. Yeah, that is about that. And then you can go through some like project structure and best practices whenever your project gets like huge in size. You can follow this. This is just like go over it in brief. Assets will contain all of your like images, videos, SVG files, all those things. Components is again like small bits of your website which you want to reuse again. Containers is something like the one they were using before, like a layout with a nav bar and a footer. Yeah. So coming to context, context is something that is probably the next concept after this, which you can go to yourself and like I won't be covering it in the video. So like I'll explain what the problem is. So in this, we needed this tasks state in multiple components. So what did we do? First, we passed it to the home component, and from the home component, I pass this tasks to the task list component, and this task list component grabs it and passes it to the task item component. See, so you see the problem like uh, because we need to access this task object, the task list component, we have to pass it to two other components, which is completely unnecessary, which you can avoid using something called as React context. You can go through this by yourself. And pages is obviously the different pages. And imports is something which you will use when you have like many subdirectories. So what you'll do is you'll import everything from a particular subdirectory and export it. Like we are not needing it here as much because we don't have that many directories. Styles again, we didn't use it in this particular project because we used Tailwind CSS, but otherwise you'd have a like pretty big styles folder as well. Redux is also similar to React Context, which you can explore. It is a state management library, basically to pass around state between different components. Utils and uh, say there is some function which you want to use in multiple files, but it is not related to something. It is just a like a basic utility. Say you want to convert a date format or you want to grab a user. So all of those things will go in the utils files folder. But it is generally not recommended to have a utils folder because it is not very self-explanatory. And at the last, you will go to something called as testing. In React, there's like in almost any big software, you'd have to test it. And if it is like pretty huge, say something the size of Google or Uber, something like that, you can't always manually test everything. So what you'll do is you'll write tests and they'll run automatically. Yeah, you can like if you want to like know more in detail, you can just go through these particular images. So what to do next? So what I would recommend is first like revise the entire React concept, which I taught in these slides through any of these resources or like W3 schools or Geeks for Geeks. Or if you want a YouTube tutorial, you can use Mosh's tutorial. Like it is I think 2 or 3 hours tutorial as such. And this ideal project structure, I got it from a Medium article. I've linked it there. And I think I've explained Tailwind CSS pretty much. If you still have some doubt, you can go through the official docs of this tutorial. And Context API is obviously the state management tool. It is provided by React. You don't have to install it again. And moving ahead, you can learn some advanced React topics. And one more problem that I'll just show you that happens. So basically, what is happening here is this basic the app.js contains the entire code, basically our entire project, and we are importing the entire project in the index.js, and it is getting pushed over to index.html in this div ID route. So what happens is when your project is too huge, your user might not be able to load the entire website, right? So what we do is like at that point, we have to switch over to something called as Next.js. What this does is it like allows you to server-side render. So basically, I want the home page, so it will only like build the home page and send it. You can like go ahead and explore Next.js further on. And I've linked some like uh, tutorials and projects as well, which you can do. So like the last thing for today would be the task. So what a task is basically like initiate a React project. And I think you have in the session one, you have written code for a like simple what do you say e-commerce website. What I want you to do is convert that to React code. Uh, what I'll do is I'll share the code I've used today for our to-do app and send it after the session. So you can take that as a reference and convert your session one's task to React. What else you have to do is I think that should take at most a day, even if you're like going through everything. And then after that, what you do is you make a page for buying products, like something like Amazon. Basically, the user would come, like if someone is trying to sell something, let upload all the data in the like selling page. You can use React Router for like, making multiple pages. And for buying products, that should be the home page, basically displaying all the products. You can take like inspiration from any e-commerce website for that. And like similar to the card function, like similar to the to-do app, what I want you to do is build a card functionality. So what happens is whenever the user hits like add to cart on a product, it should like go to the cart. I'll just show you an example for that. 1 second. So this is one of the app website I built. Say this is one of the product and the user hits add to cart. So what I want you to do is build a functionality similar to a to-do app. So what will happen is basically your app.js will contain like a state called as card products. And for products, you can use any like mock data from an API, or you can just like write it on your own. And so what I want to do is like create a page where there are like all the products displayed like this. And whenever a user hits on like uh, one product and clicks add to cart, it gets added to a cart, basically like the one we did here, like the to-do app, similar to that. And it is stored in that state. And then you can use the like list.map method to display all the cart products in the cart page. So this is the functionality I would like to like this is the compulsory task. If you want optionally, you could like later on in after all the sessions, you could integrate the Express API you built in the last session with this front end. But this is like optional, which you have to do later on, not now. So until the fourth point, you have to complete it. That, that's about it for today. Well, let me see if you guys have any doubt. Can you show an example for task? Basically, task is an object with one property as title and one more as deadline. That is it. I'm not sure if you have any other doubt. That slide unidirectional. Okay. So let me go through to that slide, which I left earlier in the beginning. Yeah, this one. So like remember we had a state called as tasks, which was in the 1 second. Yeah, I hope you can see it. So in that app.js, we had a task like state called as tasks, and we are passing it down to each component, right? So that is what is called as unidirectional data flow. In React, you can pass data from a parent to a child. But if you want, at any point of time, if you wanted to pass some data from the home component to app component, it won't be possible. You have to use something called as a state management library for that. Some libraries do have like bidirectional flow, but it just confuses things. So in React, what happens is you transfer the data from the parent to the child, but you can transfer some events from the child to the parent. So yeah, that is about it for the slide. How to secure the token. Mm, So what I'll do is I, I'll in the slides I'll just link a tutorial into like telling how to use the tokens securely. Basically, what you do is you do not store it anywhere in the browser. What we do is like we have two tokens. One is the access token, one is a refresh token. The refresh token we can store it, and what it does is it hits the server and it grabs the access token, like which is very short lived. It is like for 15 minutes. And this access token is the one that allows you access to the server. And this is not stored in the local storage or cookies. It is stored in memory, and your memory is not like prone to XSS attacks. That that is how you do it basically. I'll share you a tutorial for the entire code and everything. Any other doubts? Uh, so I hope all of you have marked the attendance. If not, you can do it right now, I believe. Yeah, you can do it right now. I'll just wait for a minute and then I'll end the session.